You are not crazy. You are just crowded. Inside of you, there are voices, not hallucinations, but inner dialogues. Inner monologues shaped by everything you've seen, heard, believed, feared, and loved. Thoughts that rise without invitation. Beliefs inherited or formed in pain. Feelings that echo old memories. Urges that tug at you from places even you can't name. They are all here, waiting to be seen, heard, understood. Some voices speak in commands, others in whispers. One voice shamas you for resting. Another warns you not to get too close. Another urges you to stay quiet. And then, beneath it all, there is one that quietly insists, there is more to life than this. These voices are not random. They are not meaningless. They are reflections of your past, echoes of your wounds, and sometimes glimpses of your potential. They are parts of you, fractures and fragments, reflections and memories, each shaped by experience. Together, they form what we call the inner world. But what is the inner world, really? It is the realm where all the layers of your identity converge. It is not just the subconscious. It is the meeting place of soul, shadow, conditioning, and desire. It is where your traumas hide and where your truth lives. It is the invisible theater in which your decisions are rehearsed before you ever speak them into reality. The inner world is not linear. It is layered and shifting, like a dreamscape that speaks in emotion more than logic. And in this landscape, some voices are protectors, others are saboteurs. Some love you, others fear you will get hurt again. And unless you learn to recognize which voice is speaking, you will unconsciously let the wrong one lead your life. Think of your inner voices like the inner court of a kingdom. Who sits on the throne? Who is whispering in the ruler's ear? Who is guarding the gates? And who is plotting behind them? This metaphor matters because whoever is seated at the center determines how you treat others, how you treat yourself, and how you relate to the world. Most people don't realize this is happening. They live with internal noise as if it is normal. They feel confused, pulled in different directions, inspired one day, defeated the next. They think they are indecisive, inconsistent, unmotivated. But often, they are just listening to a voice that doesn't belong at the front of their consciousness. Or worse, one that never deserved a microphone. You are not a failure for being inconsistent. You are simply caught in a conversation that was never made conscious. Awareness is what begins to change everything. In today's video, we're going to explore the 4 core inner voices that live inside every human being, and the one that always lies. This is not just psychology. This is soul work. Because spiritual awakening isn't just about meditation, rituals, or beautiful moments of stillness. It's not just what happens on the cushion or the mat. Awakening is also about discernment, the ability to know which inner voice to trust, and which one to question, to know when to lean in, and when to breathe out. It is learning to navigate your internal landscape with honesty, compassion, and courage. It is learning the art of becoming whole, not by silencing the voices, but by hearing them and choosing wisely. You do not need to exile the voices. You need to listen deeply enough to understand their roots, and then choose. Because each voice has a history. Each one has a reason. But not everyone has the wisdom to lead. So if you've ever wondered why you feel like 2 different people on the same day, if you've ever longed to find clarity in the chaos of your mind, if you've ever wanted to quiet your mind but didn't know where to begin, this journey is for you. Let's begin. Voice 1, the inner critic. The first voice is the loudest. It often speaks before you even open your eyes in the morning. It echoes in your head when you're brushing your teeth, when you look in the mirror, when you hesitate before making a bold choice, when you second-guess a compliment, when you delete your own idea before anyone else even sees it. It says, "You should have done better. You don't deserve that. Who do you think you are?" They'll see right through you. You're not working hard enough. You'll never catch up. You are only as good as your last win. This is the inner critic, loud, relentless, and convincing, born from shame, fed by comparison, raised in fear, sharpened by systems of conditional love, reinforced by school, media, performance culture, and unhealed family patterns. It is a voice that learned early that self-protection could be achieved through self-punishment. The critic's original purpose was survival. It formed in your earliest years as a psychological bodyguard, warning you not to misstep, not to speak too loud, not to cry too long, not to hope too big. It said, shrink now, or you'll get hurt. So you did. You bent yourself into shapes that earned approval, that avoided rejection. And the critic watched carefully, collecting notes. It learned quickly. Shame works. Guilt works. Fear keeps you in line. Perfection keeps you safe. But safety at the cost of selfhood is not protection. It is imprisonment. And here's the tragedy. The longer we let the critic run the show, the more we lose access to joy, spontaneity, curiosity, and creativity, the very parts of us that make us feel alive. The inner critic is allergic to joy. It doesn't trust ease. It flinches at rest. It cannot distinguish between growth and danger. So when you take a risk that might heal you, like starting something new, setting a boundary, asking for support, or letting yourself be seen, it panics. It tries to stop you with its favorite weapons: doubt, shame, and delay. This voice does not recognize your potential. It only sees your past. It doesn't know who you're becoming. It only knows who you've been and who you had to be to stay safe. It thrives in the shadows, in speed, in distraction. It speaks loudest when you're tired, when you're emotionally raw, when you're reaching towards something sacred. It will even weaponize your spirituality, whispering, if you were really awake, you wouldn't feel this way. That too is a lie. Because the inner critic is clever, it shape shifts. It can masquerade as your discipline. It can wear the mask of humility. It can hide behind the voice of just being honest. But its aim is the same: to keep you small, uncertain, and waiting for some imagined version of perfection before you move. It is not your truth. It is your alarm system, old, faulty, and overdue for reprogramming. And here is the deeper truth. You do not need to become perfect in order to be worthy of love. You do not need to be flawless to start. You do not need to feel confident to act with courage. You are allowed to be both a work in progress and a masterpiece at the same time. Your growth is not a punishment. It is not a project to fix what is broken. It is an excavation, a remembering, a sacred returning to your wholeness, the part of you that existed before you learned to judge yourself through someone else's eyes. You are allowed to question the narrative. You are allowed to rest without guilt. You are allowed to be seen, not as perfect, but as real. You are allowed to be messy, magnificent, and in motion. You are allowed to speak to yourself as gently as you would a child learning to walk. Rewriting the voice of the critic takes time, but it starts with awareness. It continues with intention, and it heals through repetition. When the critic says, "You'll fail," you respond, "I'll try anyway." When it says, "You're behind," you say, "I'm on my path." When it says, "Not good enough," you say, "I am still enough." You begin to parent your inner world, not with control, but with compassion. You learn to become the adult your younger self needed, the voice that says, "You are safe now. You don't need to earn rest. You are already worthy." This practice is not a one-time breakthrough. It's a relationship. Every time you choose gentleness over judgment, you weaken the critic's grip. You begin to rewire the architecture of your identity, from fear to freedom. And in time, the critic begins to soften. It becomes quieter, less dominant, still there perhaps, but no longer in charge. Because now a new voice is rising, a wiser one, a warmer one. And that voice, the one that knows your worth cannot be undone, is your real one. Let it speak. Let it lead. That is where the awakening begins. Voice 2, the ego. The second voice is seductive, not because it tells you something true, but because it tells you something tempting. It doesn't shout like the critic, nor does it haunt you in shame. It woos you. It praises you. It offers promises laced with urgency and identity. It doesn't come bearing chains. It offers crowns. It says, win, stand out, dominate, outshine, be seen, be admired, be liked, be needed, be praised, be indispensable, be unforgettable, be everything they expect and more. And then, maybe then, you'll finally be safe. Maybe then, you'll finally be enough. This is the ego. It doesn't come to destroy. It comes to define, to establish a structure around who you are and who you are not. It seeks control, clarity, identity, and yet, if you do not understand its hunger, you will mistake its voice for your own. The ego was born out of survival. From a young age, it began constructing a version of you that could navigate the world, avoid rejection, earn approval, feel special, avoid shame. It pieced together an image made from fragments, your accomplishments, your roles, your labels, your reputation, your ambitions. It is the mask you wore when you weren't sure your real face was enough. The armor you carried when you didn't feel safe being soft. The stage persona you adopted when silence felt like invisibility. And in a world that rewards performance, the ego thrives. It learns to contort itself into what is applauded. It gets high on recognition. It internalizes the belief that your value is directly proportional to how well you meet expectations. At first, the ego feels empowering. It gives you drive, direction, confidence. It helps you speak up, stand tall, dream bigger. But over time, if left unchecked, it crosses a subtle threshold, from empowering to enslaving, from guiding to governing, from helpful to hungry. It begins to believe its own mythology, that your resume is your worth, that your likes are your lovability, that your image is your identity, that more is always better, and that stillness equals irrelevance. And the moment it senses threat, a failure, a criticism, someone else's spotlight, it reacts with comparison, with jealousy, with defensiveness, with bravado that masks vulnerability. It turns inner doubt into outward projection. It trades curiosity for certainty. It would rather appear wise than risk being wrong. The ego whispers, keep going, you're almost enough. But the goalpost always moves. It is addicted to becoming. It cannot rest in being. You see, the ego isn't evil. It's exhausted. It is terrified of what lies beneath if the image it built begins to crack. It fears that without admiration, you'll disappear. That without achievement, you'll lose your place. That without applause, you won't matter. It's built on a misunderstanding that you have to earn your right to exist. That significance must be proven, not remembered. The paradox is this: the more you feed the ego's hunger for more, the more it forgets how to feel full. It becomes insatiable. You reach a milestone, but the celebration is fleeting. You gain praise, but the silence afterward feels hollow. You win, but you still feel behind. And that's when the suffering sets in. Not because you failed, but because you succeeded and still didn't feel whole. The journey of awakening is not about killing the ego. That's another trick of the ego, to make even the spiritual path a performance of purity. No, the real work is integration. It's to recognize when the ego is driving and gently ask it to sit in the passenger seat. It's to thank it for protecting you and let your deeper self lead now. It's to hold your ambition in one hand and your enoughness in the other without letting them cancel each other out. A healthy ego helps you. Set firm boundaries without fear of being unloved. Express your gifts without needing to outshine. Speak your truth without silencing others. Show up confidently without attachment to outcome. A wounded ego, on the other hand, needs constant reassurance. It resents others' success. It interprets criticism as betrayal. It avoids humility for fear of being diminished. It sees life as a zero-sum game where someone else's light is a threat to your own. But the truth is, someone else's brilliance does not dim your own. There is no shortage of light. The shift begins when you stop trying to become someone and start allowing yourself to be someone real. When your ego says, "They're ahead of you," you can say, "I'm not in their race." When it says, "If you fail, you'll be nothing," you can say, "I was already something, even in stillness." When it says, "They must think you're weak," you can say, "Strength isn't pretending I don't feel." When you begin living from your center instead of your image, the ego softens. It doesn't disappear. It relaxes. It learns to trust the deeper voice within you. It learns that love doesn't have to be chased, that respect doesn't have to be demanded, that identity isn't a costume, it's a remembering. And in that remembering, you begin to move differently. You become generous with your joy because you no longer need to hoard it. You celebrate others sincerely because their success doesn't threaten yours. You let go of the need to win every argument because peace is more valuable than dominance. You show up with presence, not performance. This is where spiritual power lives, not in the eradication of the ego, but in the reorientation of its purpose. You reclaim your worth not by achieving more, but by realizing it was never gone. And you begin to create not for applause, but from alignment. You begin to speak not for recognition, but from truth. You begin to live not for the eyes watching, but for the soul within you that was born enough. Let the ego speak, but do not confuse it with truth. Let it serve, but do not let it rule, because beyond the image lies the essence. And when you return to that essence, when you shed the mask and stop performing, something extraordinary happens. You become free, free to rest, free to fail, free to succeed without self-importance, free to love without keeping score, free to be seen and free not to be. And in that freedom, the real you emerges. Not the curated self, not the protective shell, but the luminous soul you've always been. Welcome home. Voice 3, the wounded child. The third voice is tender, not loud, not boastful. It is quiet, often nearly imperceptible. It doesn't shout for attention. It trembles beneath the surface. It doesn't demand anything with force. It pleads in soft echoes, hoping someone will finally hear. This is the wounded child, the part of you still frozen in the moment pain entered your life and made a home. It's not a metaphor. It's memory, woven into the fibers of your nervous system, stored in the corners of your body, lingering in the patterns of your emotions. It is the child you once were, the one who needed more safety, more affection, more presence, more validation, and didn't receive it. It is the younger version of you who was told, with words or silence, that who you were wasn't enough. It is the moment you first felt different, the moment you were ignored, the moment your tears were met with dismissal or discomfort, the moment you were expected to be strong before you even knew what strength was. This child is still here, not to sabotage you, not to keep you stuck, but to ask for something you never received, your own loving attention. It says things like, "Please don't leave me. I'm scared. I didn't mean to be too much. I'll be good if you stay. Do you still love me? I promise I won't cry if you just don't walk away." These words may sound familiar, not because you remember saying them, but because you still feel them deeply, in your bones. They are the background hum to your adult experiences. They show up when you feel anxious and don't know why. They appear when you react strongly to something seemingly small. They emerge when someone disappoints you, and you feel it in your chest like a childhood heartbreak all over again. This voice doesn't speak with logic. It speaks with raw emotion. It doesn't need advice. It needs compassion. It doesn't want you to fix it. It wants to be felt. It wants to be believed. It wants to be safe. The wounded child appears in your reactivity, in your disproportionate responses, in your anxious attachment, in your avoidant withdrawal, in your desire to overachieve, overextend, overplease, and overprotect. It surfaces in the part of you that doesn't believe you're worthy unless you're needed, that doesn't feel safe unless you're controlling everything, that doesn't feel loved unless you're earning it. We've been taught to outgrow this part of us, to be mature, to push forward, to toughen up, to act like it never happened. But ignoring the wounded child only makes them more desperate for your attention. They don't disappear when denied. They go underground, emerging later in conflict, in sabotage, in burnout, in loneliness. The child inside you doesn't need you to pretend nothing happened. They need you to finally say, I know it did, and I'm here now. You must become the safe adult that your younger self never had. That's when the child in you is calling, not to weaken you, but to bring you home. Speak to them with softness. I know this feeling. I've felt it before, and I'm here. You don't have to be perfect. I love you when you're scared too. You are not a burden. Your feelings are welcome with me. You are safe now. I've got you. You will not access your full spiritual power without returning to this voice, without honoring this part of you that carries your earliest beliefs about love, safety, and worthiness. If you skip this step, if you bypass it in favor of spiritual performance, productivity, or positivity, you will find yourself stuck in cycles you can't explain. You'll achieve, but still feel empty. You'll meditate, but still feel restless. You'll succeed, but still feel unloved. Because healing isn't about rising above your pain. It's about turning toward it. It's about walking back into that memory, not to relive it, but to retrieve the part of you that was left behind. And that's the sacred task, to reclaim the child you abandoned when the world told you to grow up before you were ready, to rebuild trust with the self you silenced when it hurt too much to feel, to offer your presence to the parts of you that thought they had to be someone else to be loved. The wounded child is not here to keep you stuck. They're here to remind you where to begin. Because real growth doesn't start with ambition. It starts with tenderness. When you stop trying to fix yourself and start listening, when you stop bypassing your pain and begin breathing into it, when you stop scolding yourself for your sensitivity and start honoring it, that's when the child inside you starts to trust you again. And when trust is restored, healing flows. The child stops screaming and starts listening. The anxiety softens. The overthinking loosens. The panic that used to spike when someone left the room begins to ease. You no longer chase love. You no longer beg for belonging. You no longer shrink to be safe. You stop performing your worth and start inhabiting it. You begin to show up in your life with grounded presence. You parent your inner world with clarity. You set boundaries with compassion. You speak kindly to yourself, especially when things fall apart. This is not regression. This is revolution. You are not becoming a child again. You are becoming someone who no longer abandons the child within. And that is a power very few people ever tap into, because it requires slowing down, listening in, and loving yourself with radical patience. The wounded child within you doesn't need to be buried. They need to be brought to light, with care, with honor, with reverence. Because underneath that pain is your deepest capacity for empathy, for creativity, for intuition, for connection. Let the child live. Let the fear be named. Let the wounds be witnessed. And then gently, let the healing begin. You are not just healing the past. You are building a future where your softness is not a liability, but your greatest strength. And from that place, you no longer ask, "Am I lovable?" You simply live as though you are, because you are, and you always have been. Voice for the higher self. The fourth voice is the quietest, and yet, paradoxically, it is the most powerful. It doesn't shout. It doesn't rush. It doesn't clamor for attention like the ego, nor does it tremble like the wounded child. It simply exists steady, gentle, unwavering, waiting patiently for you to slow down long enough to hear it. It doesn't demand obedience. It extends an invitation. It doesn't argue to win. It speaks from knowing. It doesn't speak from wounds or wants. It speaks from truth. It speaks in integrity, not intensity. This is the voice of your higher self, your soul, your deepest inner compass, the part of you untouched by trauma, free from programming, and unbound by the expectations of others. It is your original essence, the you that existed before fear took the wheel, the you beneath all the armor, the you that remembers, even when your mind forgets, that you are not here to perform, but to embody. It speaks in moments, not monologues, in the pause before you act, in the breath before you speak, in the shiver of resonance when something just feels right, in the sudden clarity you find after letting go. It is the feeling that you're home in a stranger's smile. It says, you are already enough. You are already loved. You are already free. You are not your past. You are not your fear. You are who you've been seeking. It nudges you toward alignment, not achievement. It reminds you that peace is not earned. It's remembered. It does not seek applause. It seeks congruence. It does not chase. It calls. This voice doesn't always come with a roadmap. It doesn't promise certainty or safety. It doesn't guarantee success by the world's standards. But it always promises wholeness. It promises truth. It promises integrity, not just to others, but to yourself. You might hear it in the quiet of a sunrise, in the tears you didn't expect to cry, in the moment you choose love over pride, in the instinct to let go when everyone else is holding on. It's not always comfortable, but it is always kind, always honest, always rooted in something deeper than circumstance. It doesn't say, be fearless. It says, be brave. It doesn't say, be perfect. It says, be present. It doesn't say, become someone. It says, remember yourself. The more you listen, the more familiar it becomes. The more you trust, the more fluent you become in its language. Your life doesn't become easier, but it becomes truer. You begin to make decisions not out of fear, but from inner authority. You stop outsourcing your power to gurus, to trends, to voices outside of you. You start asking different questions, not, what should I do? But what feels aligned? Not, what will they think? But what will I think when I'm alone with myself? Not, how do I succeed? But how do I honor what matters most? You start choosing different answers, not the ones that please others, but the ones that honor your spirit. Your higher self has never forgotten you, even in your darkest moments, even when you doubted your worth, even when you betrayed your own intuition. It was still there, waiting, watching, whispering, come back to yourself. You don't need special training to access this voice. You only need stillness, honesty, willingness, the courage to pause before reacting, the humility to admit when your ego is leading, the grace to try again. It doesn't shout because it respects your agency. It doesn't force because it believes in your freedom. But when you finally quiet the noise and ask, what do I truly want? It answers. And when you follow that answer, even trembling, you begin to live from the inside out. The path it lays is not linear. It may not make sense to others. It may require letting go of what is good for what is true. but it will always take you closer to your essence. And that is the point of awakening, not to become someone new, but to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Not to climb a mountain of self-improvement, but to come home to yourself. The one that always lies. Now we come to the most deceptive voice of all, the one that disguises itself as truth. The one that doesn't yell or shame or seduce. The one that sounds reasonable, rational, smart. The one that pretends to have your best interest at heart. This voice is not the critic, though it borrows its judgment. It's not the ego, though it feeds on the illusion of control. It's not the wounded child, though it tugs at your fear of abandonment. No, this voice is trickier, more slippery, more socially acceptable. It says, not yet. Wait, you're not quite ready. Get more experience. Get more confidence. Earn more approval. Fix this one last thing. And then, maybe you can begin. It wears the mask of caution, but its name is delay. It hides behind humility, but its motive is fear. It pretends to be wisdom, but it's just fear in disguise. This voice will say, be careful when you're finally ready to leap. It will say, be realistic when you've just started dreaming again. It will say, be smart when you finally choose your heart. It will whisper, don't rush when your soul is screaming, go now. This is the voice of postponement, the enemy of momentum. It has stopped more dreams than failure ever could. It has buried more potential than rejection ever will. It doesn't kill with violence. It kills with comfort, with distraction, with infinite preparation. This voice is responsible for the books never written, the moves never made, the love never pursued, the apologies never spoken, the art never shared, the truths never lived. It will tell you to wait until you feel brave, not knowing that courage only comes through action. It will tell you to earn your worth, not knowing that worthiness is inherent. It will tell you to prove yourself, not knowing that your existence is already proof. It lies. You are more ready than it wants you to believe. You do not need to feel fearless. You only need to feel willing. You do not need to be certain. You only need to be honest. Growth does not require perfection. Movement does not require mastery. Healing does not require being fixed first. Wholeness is not something you achieve. It's something you uncover. The antidote to this voice is action. A single step, a tiny yes, a sacred no, a breath, a boundary, a beginning. And once you move, once you interrupt the lie, you remember something essential. You are not here to wait your life away. You are here to live it. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, but fully, authentically. Now. So the next time this voice tells you to shrink, to postpone, to doubt your readiness, smile gently. Say thank you for trying to protect me, and then step forward anyway. Because your future doesn't begin when you're perfect. It begins when you choose. And the time to choose is now. Integration. So how do you navigate these voices? You don't silence them by force. You don't shame them into submission. You don't pretend they aren't there. You meet them with presence, with honesty, with care. You witness them. You listen without judgment. You become a compassionate observer of your inner world. You realize not all thoughts are yours. Not all feelings are final. You ask questions like, whose voice is this? Is this mine or something I inherited? Does it belong to the past or the future? Is it speaking from fear or from love? Is this my truth or someone else's expectation? You name them. You say, that's the ego again, seeking approval. That's the wounded child, afraid of abandonment. That's the voice of delay, trying to keep me safe by keeping me small. That's the higher self, calm, quiet, sure. You give them a seat at the table, but not the throne. You don't exile them. You don't indulge them. You integrate them. You acknowledge their intention and then choose your alignment. You create space each day to listen inward, not just when things fall apart, but proactively. You build an inner practice. That might look like meditation, or walking without your phone, or journaling your inner dialogue, or placing a hand on your heart and asking, "What's true right now?" You learn the difference between reacting and responding. You practice the sacred pause, the breath before the spiral, the gap between stimulus and choice. You practice choosing your response, not reacting by default. You respond with the voice you want to grow louder, with the self you want to become, with the values you want to embody. And over time, that version of you becomes real. And with that, a new clarity emerges. You begin to recognize truth not by volume, but by vibration. Not by how loud a thought is, but by how it lands in your body. Peace becomes your compass. Not comfort, peace. Not ease, alignment. You discover that real power doesn't come from having no voices. It comes from knowing which one to trust. That is integration. Your invitation. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are not behind. You are unfolding. You are not lost. You are remembering. You are not too late. You are exactly on time. Inside of you are voices, some wounded, some wise. Some cling to safety, some reach for truth, some echo the past, some whisper from your future. Your task is not to silence them all. It's to listen well and choose which to follow. To listen with discernment, not fear. To lead yourself with love, not noise. To build inner intimacy until your choices reflect your truth. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be real. You are not here to follow every voice. You are here to follow your inner knowing. You are not here to perform for the world. You are here to embody your soul. If this resonated, let me know in the comments. Which voice do you hear the most? Is it the critic, the ego, the wounded child, the higher self? And which one are you ready to trust more? What would change in your life if you followed the quiet one? Like, subscribe, share this with someone who's ready to come home to themselves. Because this isn't just content, this is practice. This is remembering. This is reclaiming. We are not building a channel. We are building a movement of people choosing wholeness. Stay close to your real voice. The one that's soft but sure. The one that doesn't shout, but rings true. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more clarity. It doesn't need more pretending. It needs more presence. It doesn't need more followers. It needs more rememberers. Not just awakened, but embodied. Not just seeking, but living. Not just healing, but integrating. Not just talking, but choosing. And your soul, your truest self, has never stopped speaking. Even when the world got loud. Even when fear got heavy. Even when you forgot how to hear. Now is the time to truly listen. To return. To remember. To begin again. Right here. Right now. As you are.